Hey everybody, so we are back with yet another video of the anonymous Google form submission. So you sent in something that was on your mind, a personal struggle, and it's totally anonymous. And yeah, this video seems like it's going to be pretty fun. I know it sounds like a heavy topic, but we won't be going into anything intense or anything crazy. It's just going to stay pretty tame, pretty easygoing. So let's get into it. So they said, how do I deal with seeing the loss of multiple characters I love? Anyways, I think maybe next video could be loss. Doesn't have to be something specific like loss of a loved one, more of a generalization of loss. And then they said something pretty funny at the end there. But yeah, so let's get straight into it. I like how general this question is because there's a lot to talk about, even more than I could think of, but it's also a good change of pace, something lighthearted to speak on. And every time we talk, it doesn't have to be something very heavy. It could just be something to have fun thinking about. But yeah, you mentioned characters, which gives me the impression that you're speaking in terms of fictional stories and character deaths rather than actual real life death. That's what makes it so much lighter of a topic and just a fun thing to explore. And something that comes to mind for me is that the saying how we are the museum of all the people that we meet and the things that we love. And that's why when we lose something or someone, whether that be a hobby or a phase of our life or just a character in a show, it feels like we're losing a part of ourselves. I mean, in shows and books, you're meant to get attached to the characters and be able to understand them and relate with them as you would a good friend. And that was actually something a few months ago that I had spoken with my friend about, and it was after I had read a pretty good book. I felt like I knew the character personally and I could think in their mindset, we were one and the same in that sense. And I believe that's very necessary when it comes to understanding others. I mean, it's the whole trait of empathy that we need to come to learn. And myself and this character were very similar yet extremely different in certain aspects. We're still distinct people, and yet after reading and indulging myself in this story and allowing this character to become part of myself, I could then understand their perspective and where they're coming from. Another thing is that our hobbies and our interests can come and go throughout our life. Loss is a totally natural part of life, and it's easy to fall into thinking that loss is to be exclusively grief. And of course, when we talk in terms of people, it's a totally different situation, but currently we're talking about a very lower intensity level of loss. And in regarding aspects of life and such certain time periods of life or hobbies we used to have, it can be easy to think that we've lost like the good old days or we've passed the prime of our lives. And the truth is that life is meant to be constantly shifting and changing. If we aren't changing, then we're no longer living. The butterfly does not mourn its cocoon, for it knows there are greater days ahead. And now I know that was some beautiful poetry right there. Thank you, thank you. But anyways, no, but I'm not saying that life is always going up in a constant upward motion, but every loss taking us lower only makes us rising to the top even more gratifying. And when it comes to loss, it's, as many people say, that it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. To experience loss is to know the depth of your love and the value that life brings. You know that you once felt such great joy, and even though you've lost it, it's beautiful to know that you had that. And sometimes, for example, I miss being a kid and I feel like I lost those days. But the thing is, they still continue to exist in me. And something I'd said to my friend a couple months ago is that we are all time travelers through the superpower of memory. I can transport myself back to my childhood through my mind's eye, and I can see myself there and those feelings and appreciate that time, and I can move forward. That's a very important part, is moving forward. It would be unhealthy of me to spend my whole life centered around something that's no more and that no longer exists. But the thing is, I've just got to know that though that time has passed, this is not the end. Loss can be purposeful and it can even be necessary towards greater growth of who we are as people. And I know I kept this video kind of short, and there's a lot more to talk about this and say, and I totally encourage you guys to discuss more with the people around you and share your thoughts, maybe throw in a comment if you want, and the Google form will always be here if you want to ever talk about anything, and I totally invite you to, whether it be something serious or something just kind of fun to think about, fun to talk about. And the key takeaway from this video that I want you to know is that loss is an inevitable and necessary aspect of life, but it's not final, okay? That's the important part. It's not the end. And most people mistake loss as a setback, but really it can be what will launch you forward, you know? It's something that we can choose to reconstruct our loss into a catalyst for transformation.